We can be in the world, but we don't have to take part in it. We can be that light, that shining light, because we now know that as we're speaking here, we're emitting biophotic charges from every cell of our body. These biophotic charges don't just stay in our body, they extend out from us. And with our research, we know that our heart, which is a magnetic frequency, it pulses. Discovered through science right now, today, we can measure that up to 18 feet away from the body. So when you think about here in the United States, we have something called the National Institute of Health. They actually call it the biosphere. In 1994, they discovered it. So when you think about this field of energy that surrounds us, most people, when you're under stress, that field of energy collapses. So think about it like a waveform. And when you show up, if you're in a state of fear, anxiety, stress, depression, these are all low energy, low frequency states. What motivates me is if we could get 1 billion people all operating in this higher frequency, we're going to change the planet. Because
you inspire me to be the higher me. You're my inspiration to creation.
שלום לכולם וברוכים הבאים לפודקאסט השראה להבראה. Welcome to my podcast Inspired to be higher.
Deep within, let your dreams begin.
Hello and welcome to the Inspired to be Higher podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Dr. Pattrick Pורטר, a leading expert in brainwave science and the creator of BrainTap. Dr. Pórter has dedicated his career to helping people tap into the power of their mind for better health, performance, and healing. His work has transformed the lives of thousands, including my own. I love the BrainTap. We'll talk about that. Of course, those who are dealing with stress, trauma, sleep issues, and even chronic disease. With the world facing so much uncertainty and personal challenges, his insights couldn't be more timely. Dr. Pórter, welcome and thank you.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
I want you to introduce the BrainTap and the science behind it. But before, I want to ask you something I ask usually all my guests at the end of the podcast, but would love for you to tell us your inspiration. This podcast is Inspired to be Higher. So what is your inspiration? What inspires you to do these amazing things?
I think the main thing that inspires me is that people think of themselves as limited and that we're destined to get old, lose our memories, be senile, and be taken care of as we age. And I don't think that's the fact at all. In fact, it started for me at a young age when I realized that my brain was really my problem, or my mind, however you want to think about it. Think of the brain as the hardware and the mind as the software. And my software was not working too well. I was a very negative kid, and I thought the world was out to get me. And luckily for me, my dad became a Silva instructor, which was it's called the Silva method. It was a meditation program. It's still available. Millions of people do it every day. Yeah. And they have something in there called the Silva sound. And this sound was we would call it an isochronic tone now, because you could use it in an open room and the whole group would meditate to the sound. And I realized that just by being exposed to the sound, I was better and my brain worked better. And so that really inspired me to continue on with my meditation. And then as life circumstances happened, I was able to be a part of a group called Light and Sound Research in the 80s. And we built the very first portable light and sound machine, which was really an accident. It wasn't an accident, but it was a prototype. And the prototype was for a bigger machine, which cost $10,000. So back in the 80s, that'd be like a $40,000 machine now. And nobody could afford it. So we were looking at how could we miniaturize this thing. And then the EEPROM chip came out, LEDs came out. So most people watching this probably don't remember those days, but we built these in our back office and we built them as prototypes. And we realized that people who could never meditate before could now start meditating. And it's not about being spiritual, although that's a side benefit because the more energy you have. So one of the things that I believe is that we all have a frequency. Like you have a frequency, I have a frequency. And if you think of frequency, it's what you frequently see. So when you have a high frequency, When you're reaching for your goals, you're going to surround yourself with high frequency people. You're going to eat high frequency foods. You're going to do high frequency activities. If you have low frequency because of what's happening in our environment, we're being bombarded by EMF, we're being bombarded by poor foods, we're being bombarded by 24-hour news cycles. These things are all really crushing our spirit. So what motivates me is to know that we can be in the world, but we don't have to take part in it. We can be that light, if you will, that shining light, because we now know that as we're speaking here, we're emitting biophotic charges from every cell of our body. These biophotic charges don't just stay in our body, they extend out from us. And with our research, we know that our heart, which is a magnetic frequency, it pulses and can be discovered through science right now. Today, we can measure that up to 18 feet away from the body. So when you think about here in the United States, we have something called the National Institute of Health. They actually call it the biosphere. And so we have, in 1994, they discovered it. So when you think about this field of energy that surrounds us, most people, when you're under stress, that field of energy collapses. So think about it like a waveform. And when you show up, if you're in a state of fear, anxiety, stress, depression, these are all low energy, low frequency states. What motivates me is if we could get 1 million, I say 1 billion now because we already have 3 million, but 1 billion people all operating in this higher frequency, we're going to change the planet. Because it's just like when we just have to look at sports. When the one guy ran the 4-minute mile, within the next 5 years, high schoolers were running the 4-minute mile. So what stopped all the history of time before that? Nobody could run a 4-minute mile. But as soon as one person broke through, other people discovered how to do it. And I think that as we all break through, as you break through, as I break through, as other people break through, they realize that you can be in the world, you can handle all the stress, because it's not stress that's the problem. Stress is not the problem. And this is one of the things I like to motivate people. It's your capacity to handle stress. And right now, most people are under chronic, low-level stress all the time. And we know that this crushes your energy. I mean, physiologically, it crushes the energy at the cellular function called the mitochondria. And so what we're doing, the reason we created light and sound was the light actually speeds up the production of something called ATP. So ATP up to 32 times more. So imagine going to the gas station and you're filling up your gas tank. What might have taken you 32 minutes, now you can do it in 1 minute. So what we're doing is we're accelerating the ability for the brain and body to synchronize with its environment because it's all energy. And then once you have your field, your energy field, and you're positive, we all know those positive people, they actually have like a gravitational pull around them. They call it charisma or whatever. You have this certain field. And I think that more people need to step up and realize their full potential. And I feel if I could do it, and I still feel like it's my first day of work. So, I feel like this is something that when I went to school for electronics and I was never going to do what my dad did, but then I kept getting sucked back into his seminars and doing his things. And then I realized this is what I do for fun. So now I get to make a living doing it. And to see, if people just do hashtag BrainTap on any social media site, they're going to see thousands of people talking about how it's helped their lives. And I think just seeing that spark and then knowing that every person has their sphere of influence. And if we can just continue to upgrade the frequency around us, we're all going to live in the world we want instead of the world that's being dictated to us by psychopaths, really. I mean, there's a lot of weird people out there doing, to just greed. When you think about, we could be producing food and we could be producing good air, we could be producing good energy, all of these things, if the right frequency of people start tuning into it instead of thinking that they're a slave to it. I think most people think, oh, I'm born, I live my life, I die, and this is it. No, it's not. You have an active role. Whoever's watching this, you have an active role. You're not here by accident. You're not listening to this podcast by coincidence. There's a reason you're tuning in today to spark that intelligence. We all have an innate intelligence, and we're part of this universal field. And I think that if I can activate even one person on this podcast, I feel like my job's done for the day. But I know that, we want to, it's never done. There's a saying that Rod Harrison, who's a good friend of mine out of Austin, Texas, he says, there is no there. So a lot of people think they're going to graduate. Like there's going to be some day we're going to get a certificate and we're going to say, okay, we're we're divine consciousness or whatever, we're enlightened or we're saved. No, even if you're saved, even if you're enlightened, even if all these things, you still have work to do, because until the last one's out of here, I always say, no one. It's like the Marines have a saying: no one left behind. We don't want to leave anyone behind. I mean, everyone can do this, and I think most people don't realize how intelligent they are, how vastly their potential. One of my favorite sayings is, you don't know how intelligent, how vast your mind can be. I mean, I'll just tell one story and then we'll move on so people understand it. But there was a woman down in Florida, a good friend of mine, Jack Canfield and Bob Harris. Jack Canfield wrote the books Chicken Soup for the Soul. And he wanted to interview this woman. She was 80 years old and she lifted a car off her grandson. And then she went into hiding. She became a recluse. And so he wanted to know, why? You just lifted a car off your grandchild. Why would you become a recluse? You should be celebrating that. So when he finally got in to see her, he said, what happened? You lifted this car off your grandson. She goes, I'm 80 years old. I wasted my life. I lifted a car off my grandson. What could I have done if I'd known that I had this potential? So
Wow.
if everyone out there listening, what could you do if you unlock your potential? If you woke up every morning saying, what one thing could I do today to unlock my potential? Then we'll all have a better life. It's not about Patrick. It's not about Shira. It's about how do we awaken this world to the potential that we have, because it could be a much better place than we see, hear, and experience. And we don't have to let our politicians, our corporate governance, all these people control it. We control our own. I'd like to tell people, you control your own weather. It doesn't matter if the sun's shining outside. The sun is always out. So we want to make sure that they come out and be the awakened person that I know they can be.
Wow, I love this conversation. It's amazing, so inspirational. I completely agree. I'm a therapist, I'm a naturopath, and I absolutely feel that our job as a therapist is more than just helping each patient, but it's also, you have to be an activist in this world today, because there is so much wrong going on. So I completely resonate. Thank you so much. So regarding the patients, for those new to BrainTap, please tell us about it, how it came about. I mean, what is it exactly? What does it do?
Right. Well, you showed your picture of yours, and if you want to show it to them, I can kind of explain a few things.
I have my
Yeah. So when you see it there's a visor, and it's like a helmet, but let's start with the lights, because that's what makes us uniquely different. In the 80s, LEDs first came out. And so we were looking at how could we get people to relax? And I'm a psychologist. So how can we get them to relax and get out of pain? Because pain only happens in one brainwave state called beta. So if you're not in beta, you don't feel pain. That's why when you're sleeping, you don't feel pain. And if you're doing something you enjoy, pain will diminish, because these other brainwave states create different neurotransmitters, really. I mean, like acetylcholine and GABA, and there's 54 of them, so we're not going to go through the whole list. But your brain makes those when you go through the different brainwave states, and that's why sleep is so important. Most people aren't sleeping. But with a candle, what we noticed was when people put a candle on, and most people out there probably have put a candle on just to relax, maybe take a bath, or put a candle on, or just something like that. Well, in India, they have a meditation called the Jyoti meditation, which is where you look at a candle and you meditate. So we were looking at that. What does that do physiologically? Now, back in the 80s, we didn't have EEG like we have today. We couldn't measure the brain, So what we were measuring was the physical body. So we were measuring hand temperature. When your hands are warm, you don't have pain. It's one of the things that we teach, and it's one of the biofeedback methods that we teach people. Also, when you do deep breathing, you get out of pain. So we were looking at respiration, we were looking at hand temperature, we were looking at, stillness. And then
I just want to understand, if someone has a headache, they need to warm their hand and their headache will go.
Because what that does, it creates vasodilation, blood flow, and circulation.
Okay.
Think of a headache like when you take a rubber band and you tie it around the end of your finger, and that finger will start to hurt. What's really happening is you don't have blood flow and circulation in the brain. So once you have blood flow and circulation, you don't have pain anymore because there's oxygen. So we need to bring that oxygen into that area. And there's only a few ways you can increase blood flow and circulation to the brain. Light is one of the best. So when you're we're designed to be half naked running around outside when the sun's out. And then we go to sleep when it's dark, but we don't do that anymore because we have LCD screens, lights, and all these things. So when you think about the solution, we know the solution. In fact, it's in the Vedas, it's been in ancient texts from China. We know what to do, but nobody has the time to do it. So we have a technology problem. So we need a technology solution that can be scaled across the world. And that's our mission, to better 1 billion brains. And that's why we went to India and we opened up India, and they're really receptive to this. And we're working with some of the it's in America, we have a college called MIT, which is kind of the biggest and brightest. But in India, they have 6 of those. It's called the AIMS Institute, the All Indian Institute of Medical Sciences. Well, they actually changed their neurocenter to the BrainTap, Brainwave Entrainment Neurocenter, because we're proving out all their ancient sciences with technology. So when you think about all that you do, and we did this with a candle, and it really came to mind when Varun, who's one of the scientists there, he said to me, he goes, Dr. Porter, you're cheating, because we took a guru up on stage and we did his EEG. We showed his brainwave profile when he meditated. Then I took somebody who'd never meditated before, and within 7 minutes, they had the same brain profile.
Wow.
And so 11-minute session, the guy spent 4 minutes in the same brainwave state as this guru did. And he said, you're cheating. He goes, that guru has been meditating for 30 years. This guy just comes up on stage and he does it. I said, well, Varun, have you ever meditated to a candle? He said, oh yeah, all the time. I said, well, that's cheating. That candle's technology.
Yeah.
So every fire, if you've ever been to a bonfire and people go, I'm mesmerized by the fire, that's because a fire does 2 things that are really important to our brain, and why ancient cultures would meet around the fire before they'd go to sleep. One is the fire burns at 10 hertz frequency. That happens to be alpha. Alpha at 10 hertz is what we call neutral for the brain. That's why most people, when they meditate, try to go to alpha. But the candle doesn't move, right? The candle just flickers at 10 hertz frequency. So what we find with most adults is they're missing a brainwave called theta. So what we found was with LEDs, we could change the frequency of that light. We could slow it down. That's why when you're going through the session, the lights change and they do different things. And as that light changes, the brain follows it. The science is actually called frequency following response. So the first thing we did back in the 80s was we introduced light therapy through the eyes. Now, a lot of people go, why the eyes? Well, your eyes have more mitochondria than any other area of the body per square centimeter. So your eyes actually absorb light energy. So if you're brown-eyed, you don't bring in as much light energy. If you're blue-eyed, you bring in more light energy. That's why there's more blue-eyed people in the northern regions of the globe rather than on the equator. Now we're spread out all over the place. So, there's blue-eyed people everywhere, brown-eyed people everywhere. But this means that some people will be more sensitive to light. So we have different light. You can set it, more light is not better. It just gives you a different experience. You can do it with low level light because it's not the eyes that you're actually seeing with. It's actually attracting optic nerve, which is cranial nerve 2. So when your eyes are closed, this light is flickering. Your brain is timing it. And for those that remember back, we used to time motors like an engine, we would have a timing light. Well, the brain times its light to its frequency to its environment. So for instance, if you and I were to walk down to the water, like the body of water, like a lake or a river or an ocean, our body would sync to that body of water because that body of water is bigger than us and creates a bigger frequency. This frequency happens to be 10 hertz. That's why people, when they go to the ocean and they listen to the waves, they go, wow, why am I so relaxed? And they're so comfortable and they start to ease. That's because the brain starts to create those neurotransmitters associated with that. And as we're sitting there, we get to feel good. Some people will actually fall asleep because they're so stressed out. And also when they're listening to like classical music, and my wife used to work for the Phoenix Symphony, and we'd go there and, the tickets, this was back in the late 80s, and the tickets were over $100 then, and that was pretty expensive. And I'm looking around and everybody's sleeping, and I go, well, then they come back because they don't get to sleep well. Because when you're in 10 hertz frequency, that's something called the Mozart effect. So what we did at first was we matched the rhythm and the cadence of the sounds to that, what they call 10 hertz cycle. We have 10 hertz music. So we match the music with the light. Now what happens is now we're creating an immersion experience, which means the brain starts to disassociate from the outer world and starts to tune into the inner world. In the inner world is where our thoughts are that control us, because only 5% of what happens to us every day is our conscious mind. 95% of what we're doing, even while we're sitting here talking, your conscious mind is listening to my voice, but your subconscious is beating your heart, breathing, changing your cells, 50 million cells per second, 75 trillion cells are exchanging energy. There's all sorts of things going on. Literally trillions of things that you couldn't consciously ever do, but your subconscious is doing them without even breaking a sweat. This is what it does all day long. So now if we don't train it, we can get stressed out and it will start to anticipate stress. This anticipatory stress is what's killing people today because they don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And Deepak Chopra, who's one of the heroes in the quantum movement, you know, and just thinking about things and health, he says that 97% of what's going to happen to us tomorrow we know about today. So when you settle in and you start to relax, you can start to visualize. Could you imagine watching your favorite movie and the actors and actresses never rehearsed what they were going to do in those scenes? Well, it would be really messed up, right? They would make mistakes, they would do things. Well, people do that every day in their own life.
Yeah.
So part of it is calming down the mind enough that you can start to plan and prepare your future that you prefer rather than one that's being delivered to you. Because by default, life will show up, you know, but if we show up for life, then life happens through us instead of to us. So
summoning things.
Yes. Yeah. So just let that sink in for a minute. What if life happens through us, we're in control. If life happens to us, we're a victim. And one thing we know with a study they did actually during COVID, they actually can measure the light energy emitted from a person. You emit 810 to 860 nanometer light. Every person does. It's not just the holy people that have that corona discharge around their head, you know, that when they show in holy pictures. Every person does it. We just can't see it because it's not bright enough. So what happens is when you look at life as a challenge, your light gets brighter. And they know that it now triggers your epigenetic system. It actually upregulates every cell of your body to face that challenge. Now, if you say life is a threat, like what happens when you watch the news or you get bad news or you're a negative thinker, then your body actually downregulates. It produces less light energy. Now, that light energy is really important because we know the nervous system, we know all of these, the cardiovascular system, but now we have something called the biophotic system. And it works through the body and it actually educates every cell in how we regulate. It's really the most, right now, it's the most, if you will, downstream, because everybody's working upstream. You know, when you take a supplement, that's upstream. You're affecting it after the fact. So, but if you affect the energy system, now you're affecting root cause, or at least there might be something we'll find later. But, you know, so what we're doing is we're going to try to tune the body to be in the right brainwave frequency for health, healing, and vitality. So we have to move them out of beta into alpha. Now, what we found out when we started using light and sound was we could get people to drop into a state called theta. Now, theta is really important because most adults don't have enough theta. That's why they can't sleep. 2/3 of the world isn't sleeping. So think of a dial on a clock, and you can't get to you can't get to 3 without crossing over 2. So when you're sleeping, you can't just jump from beta to delta into deep sleep. You've got to go through the cycles. So some people, it takes up to 4 hours to get into their first deep sleep cycle. And we need at least 1 hour of deep sleep and 2 hours of REM sleep for the brain to modulate. And that's really what it's doing at night. When people go, why do I need to sleep? Well, the body's going through a cycle. It's actually rebooting like a computer, but it's taking everything you did during the day, organizing it through your thoughts, getting it ready for tomorrow, keeping what is good, keeping what is bad, but you assigned what is good and bad. You know, you assigned it, you gave it meaning. So depending upon, you know, when the Benedictine monk said, give me a child to their 7, I'll give you a Catholic for life. It's because what they did was they programmed them. You know, we're all programmed by our brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers, preachers, teachers, everyone had a chat. Now, once we're 7 years old, which is kind of ironic that they said that in the quote, is that our brain starts to sort out things. Sometime between 5 and 7 years old, we started saying, hey, this is my life. I'm going to start to form my own beliefs. But the problem is we only form them based on the beliefs other people have already told us. So sometimes we get mom and dad's negativity, or we get their limitations. If we had a great upbringing, like my dad got help, so I got to upgrade my thinking at 12 years old. You know, where I tell people, you don't have a breakdown to have a breakthrough. You can start your breakthrough today, because you can sort through your memories. What's serving you? What isn't serving you? So theta is really important, because we call this the inventive mind. Think of your alpha mind as your intuitive mind, because everything you do, like even reaching for a glass of water, or a cup of coffee, or feeding yourself, or driving your car, those are all mostly done intuitively. You don't think about them anymore. You've done them so many times. You don't get out of the chair and say, wait a minute, I got to put my right foot in front of my left foot. I got to keep walking. You know, all that is done with your intuitive mind. So your inventive mind is a place where you get to delve into the dream world, if you will, and start solving your problems. Every great inventor has done it. I mean, when you read any book about Edison, Einstein, Tesla, Elon Musk, any of those people, what they do is they use this inventive part of their mind. Most people don't have that anymore because they're not thinkers. And that's one of my jobs, is to make people think again. You know, we need people to think instead of just responding and looking outside themselves for the answers. The answer is within you, for you. You know, you have your own answers. But the problem is the terrain, if you will, just like we have a gut terrain that I'm sure you work with all the time with your business. That gut terrain, most people don't realize there's more neuron connections in your gut than there are in the brain between your ears. So we have this thinking brain. That's why when somebody gets, let's say they get in an accident and their spine gets severed, they're still breathing, their heart is still beating, because the gut brain has taken over. But there's another brain that we learned about actually in the late 90s, which is the heart. Your heart has 40,000 neutrino cells. These are brain cells. And one of the most fascinating stories about that is it's a heart transplant. And the person who got the heart transplant, he was really trying to be healthy, changed his diet, did everything, but he still needed a heart transplant. So he gets his heart transplant. As soon as he gets it, he's craving Kentucky Fried Chicken. He can't understand it. He doesn't know why he's craving Kentucky Fried Chicken. Well, he found out the person's heart that he got loved Kentucky Fried Chicken, because those neutrino cells were already programmed.
Wow.
So, but it's just cells. So we can reprogram them. We can retrain them, if you will, to be in harmony with our body. Now, if you have somebody else's organ, you got to take, you know, some kind of drug so it doesn't reject that organ, because your cells know who you are. So it's always better to work with your own body, obviously. So we know that theta is a very intuitive mind. Also, if we want to get you to do a reboot in the middle of the afternoon, like we did a study with Julia Arndt, which is now, if you look up Julia Arndt Peak Performance Study, she did a TED Talk about this study. And what we showed was when these Googlers, these were top 1%ers, and when COVID happened, they were burning out. Because when you take them out of that pressure of having to code and work, they were working from home in their pajamas, and they were told, hey, you got to go back to the office. It was a stressed environment. They didn't want to do that anymore, so they were burning out. So they said, hey, what can we do for these people? And Julia contacted me, and I said, well, they need to do a 20-minute BrainTap session in the middle of the day. And they said, we don't have 20 minutes. We can't do that. You know, we get paid by the keystroke. So imagine you're doing a job and they're measuring every time you hit a key. And they know if you're working or not because you're hitting the keys on the keyboard. So that's like a slave, right? I mean, you're just working away. And I said, well, give me 2 weeks. And I guarantee you will never not take a 20-minute break. So it was a 6-week study that we published. What we showed at the end of 6 weeks was not only did they get more work done during the day, 26% more work every day they got done by taking a 20-minute break. That meant in a 5-day week, they got a day and a quarter more work done by taking a 20-minute break. And so we're designed to actually take a nap in the middle of the day. I mean, these bodies, no matter who you are, they'll say these bodies were designed for the Serengeti. You know, what happens in the Serengeti at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? Everybody's sleeping, taking a nap. Well, yes. So think in terms of our sun. And kind of going a little bit outside here, but the sun is our mitochondria for our planet, for our solar system. So
Nice.
it's beaming information to us.
Okay.
If we don't, at 2 o'clock every afternoon, your biology, your body actually drops in temperature 2 degrees. At 2 o'clock a.m., no matter where you're at on the planet, 2 o'clock your time, your temperature is going to increase 2 degrees. Now, what tells your body to do that? The photic exchange from our sun. It's called the circadian rhythm.
Right.
So now if we don't get to bed by 10 o'clock, we don't make as much melatonin at night. If we don't get to bed by 11, our liver doesn't clean as well. These are, in everything biologically is tuned to this light. So we're designed to wake up when the sun rises. We're designed to sleep when the sun sets. And now we've messed with all that. So what we want to show is that technology can help reset that circadian rhythm, and that's what we've done with BrainTap. So the other side benefit, you can read about the whole study if they want to look it up on our website, but they also found their sleep score improved 43%, and we never did anything about sleep. But when you offload stress in the middle of the day, you sleep better at night. And when you have more energy, you sleep better at night. So as you're using the BrainTap, we have light, we have sound, we have vibration, we have frequencies. Now the ear lights are a relatively new addition. Actually, I added those in 2012. So what we were doing was we were working with autistic children, and some of the autistic children could not listen to the BrainTap. You know, they would throw it across the room, and we just had eyeglasses at the time and earphones, and there was no lights in them. And then one of our doctors said, you know, when I use lasers on the ears of these kids, there's auricular points, there's meridians that run through the ears and through the rest of the body. And so what we did is, Francisco Cedral and I, we researched how much light would we have to bathe the ear with to imitate a 2-minute laser dose. So the photic exchange, and we used red and blue light because we're trying to imitate sunrise and sunset. And these are the two primary brain waves that happen to awaken our energy in our body, and that's what naturally happens. But those lights are actually changing to something called no-gear frequencies every 2 minutes. So every 2 minutes, that light is changing to a new frequency. So it's not just light. Every 2 minutes it's changing to a different light. Embedded into every recording is earth frequencies. Because if you and I also, and when I told Varun, I said, you know, do you ever wonder why those gurus go to the Himalayas to meditate? He says, to get away from people. I said, no, they're cheating. He said, what do you mean they're cheating? I said, the mountains, all mountain ranges, especially the Himalayas, resonate at 7.8 hertz frequency. That happens to be theta. Now, one thing that we now know about theta is when you're in a state of theta, your brain instructs your gut to produce more GABA. GABA is a precursor to something called DMT. DMT is in every cell of your body. And this is why people do like a psilocybin and they do DMT even trips, they do ayahuasca. But the reality is that you already have it inside your own body. So you can activate these what they call the God molecule in every cell of your body just by getting into high states of theta or gamma, which is a relatively new brainwave. So when we get into delta, I'm just going to go through it. So we started to research that, hey, we could slow down the frequency of light, sound, and vibration so slow that it could be even 0.5, and the brain would follow it. Now, this is deep delta. Now, what they found out in 2015, so listeners need to hold on if they don't know this fact, but in 2015, they discovered a new part of the human anatomy. Imagine that. All the years we've had physiology books, and they didn't know we had a glial lymphatic system until 2015 because it only turns on during level 4 sleep. So my question is always, what other dormant skills does our body have that we don't know about? If you look at the spectrum of frequency and light, sound, and vibration in the universe, and we put it across the screen right now, we occupy not even a hair's length. But all those other frequencies, all those other sounds, all those other worlds, all those other vibrations are there. And this world is only light, sound, and vibration. If I took all of the physical matter in the known universe, in our known universe, we could fit it in a thimble. It's all information, resonating, vibrating, and you're part of that. You're not separated from it. You're in the soup, as they say. So if we want to tune in, turn on, and unlock our brain's potential, it comes from within us. It doesn't come from outside of us. So when we get into these different states, now what we found out, this will be the last thing and we'll go on to the next question, with BrainTap using light, sound, and vibration, and you can do it in as little as 11 minutes. We're doing a partnership with a company that has an EEG device that can measure real-time EEG. It's very inexpensive. We have some at the office that cost $27,000. This is one that only costs $600. And it has research grade EEG. So when I met her at a Dave Asprey event, a biohacking event, she said, I don't believe you can do gamma in 11 minutes. I said, well, let's record you doing it. So I put her on an 11-minute session with her device, which is a EEG reading device, which we're in a partnership with. We're going to actually build it into a future BrainTap so people can actually see their brainwaves change. So what I told her was, do the session, and then I'll show you what happens. So she does the session. We record it, obviously, on the screen. And when she looks at it, I said, at 7 minutes, you're going to see something incredible happen, because that's when the hemispheres of the brain will synchronize. What I mean by that is that everything in the universe is synchronizing. When you meet, like, let's say you meet somebody who's a really upbeat, positive person. When you leave them, you feel energized. If you meet somebody who's a drainer, what we call energy vampire, you lose energy because you're syncing with that person. That's why, we get this frequency or this vibe with people. So when you're vibing with people and they're the same frequency, then like I said, you're frequently you're seeing the same things, you have the same goals, you have the same outcomes, you're uplifting. Well, with her, she saw this big increase of gamma and it stayed throughout the whole session. And the nice thing is with BrainTap, it will actually stay for 72 hours. So that means that it's not just like we've done tests with music, and music is really powerful. But when you're done listening to the music, your brain goes right back to whatever state it was used to. But if we took that same piece of music and put my algorithm in the background, that brain balance will stay for up to 72 hours. Now, everything in your nervous system shifts every 72 hours. So the body you're in right now, the frequencies you're experiencing were actually part of the last 72 hours. They didn't just happen, unless you had a big stressful event that happened, something that disrupted your nervous system. That's why, when we get upset or somebody pulls in front of us and we get angry, some people aren't able to switch those gears. So what we showed her was, yeah, we can train gamma. And every session is different on BrainTap. Because when somebody goes, well, why can't I just go on YouTube and listen to their binaural beats? Because they don't know what they're doing. Anybody can create a binaural beat now because the technology is out there, but they haven't done any science. And it's not just about listening to 10 hertz. It's not just listening to 40 hertz. It's not just listening to 88 hertz. It's about moving that brainwave. And what we've shown with BrainTap, and we have all the science that backs it up, is that we train the brain to move like an orchestra. We call it an orchestra of brainwaves because no one brainwave is more important than any other. If I was going to do, let's say I was going to do high-level creative thinking, or maybe I was going to do a healing session with somebody, I would want a lot of theta and gamma, because these are the brainwave states that resonate there. If I was going to do problem solving, I might go into alpha. If I wanted to do a sport, I'm going to have a high degree of beta, because I'm going to have my reactionary mind there so I can catch the ball or hit the ball or whatever. If I'm going to sleep, I'm going to have to turn all those brainwaves off as much as possible and turn on the primary brainwave of delta. And what we can do now is with BrainTap, we can do that. So there's 3 different times of the day that we recommend BrainTap. One is in the morning. We call it digital coffee. It wakes your brain up, brings you focus, turns on norepinephrine, dopamine, and cortisol. Now, your brain does that naturally. So unfortunately, if you're one of those people that woke up this morning and couldn't function until you had your cup of coffee, that means you have a neurological problem. You just slept all night. You don't need a cup of coffee first thing in the morning. And I love coffee myself, but I don't have it first thing in the morning because this disrupts something called the cortisol curve. And when we wake up, we should have high cortisol in the morning. And what people will find is as they drink their coffee through their life, their cortisol curve will crush, and pretty soon they don't have cortisol in the morning. Now they have to have coffee. So, but the brain is the most powerful pharmacy on earth. It can dispense 30,000 different neurochemicals. So imagine turning on this pharmacy, getting it to deliver to you when you need it the most, whatever neurotransmitter you need. And if you need more, guess what? You have a powerful gut. As long as your gut health is good, you can make more. There's an endless supply, and if you're eating healthy foods. So when you think about brain health, we always say diet is number one. You cannot think a bad diet. I can't just eat, there's no Twinkie tree for Twinkies to fall out of, or, donut tree. I mean, somebody manufactured those, and then your body has to work twice as hard to get rid of those. So we want to eat plenty of fat, fiber, and protein is what our body needs, and supplement. I'm a big believer in that because our soils are so depleted. Unless you're making your own vegetables and you're giving them all the nutrients they need, you're going to need to supplement. And then number two, we need to move and breathe. Like right now, I'm standing while I'm doing this. I like to stand at least half the time when I'm working because 20 minutes of setting, they say, is equivalent to the health equivalency of smoking a cigarette, which is not healthy at all. So your body is down-regulating its nervous system. When you're at rest, your body thinks it's time to sleep. So what we find, and we have, if they go to my YouTube, they'll see a lot of different videos about this, but most people are over 60% delta while they're awake. And there's a saying that I've heard ever since I've been in this field, since the 70s, that the masses are asleep, right? You've probably heard that before. I say they're not asleep, but their brain certainly wants to be. They want to, because they have a lot of inflammation. Inflammation is probably the biggest problem we have today in our physiology. So when we eat right, we move, then we do brain fitness. That's where BrainTap comes in. Now, the thing is that you can't just do one of those. One of them can get you somewhere, but in all of physics, they say you have to have 3 vectors in order to reach your destination, right? To know where you're at in any space and time. So I say those 3 vectors are diet, movement, and brain fitness. And BrainTap just happens to be one of them. And some people say, well, I meditate. I say, so what? I've measured 30,000 brains, and I've not seen but a handful of people that meditate correctly. Because we have something called the default mode network. This is a part of our brain. We call it the monkey mind. A lot of people do. Because when you close your eyes, you start meditating, you start hearing this negative voice. And psychology says that this 50,000 word tape loop that plays over and over and over again, that just keeps playing all day long, 80% of it's negative. And that's not a bad thing. It's protecting us. It's saying, is this a safe place? Am I okay here? Am I okay to express myself? But we don't have to worry about saber-toothed tigers anymore. We don't have to worry about all the deaths that we used to have. So we can kind of put that in what we put it into abeyance. We just say, yeah, we need to be aware. We need to be aware that we're safe. We don't do something crazy like jump off a cliff, or, people do these things because they want to get the adrenaline high. But the reality is that we don't have to do these things anymore. We can live a pretty good life without having to stress out, but we do need stress. So if we don't have stress, the one statistic they did with mice, because mice are the victims of almost every research project. They took these mice and they gave them everything. One group of mice, they brought them their food, they brought them their water. The mice didn't even have to move. They brought them a mate. They didn't have to do anything. They got everything. Those mice didn't live. They only lived 60% as long as the mice that they stressed out. The mice that they moved their food, they didn't feed them some days. They made them work for, getting a mate. All these things. So stress is what drives
Hermesis.
Yes,
Hermesis.
yes. So we need that stress. So I always tell people, don't try to get rid of your stress. Build your capacity. And really, when you think of the bottom line, what BrainTap does, it builds capacity for you to think, act, and respond in the best way you can. So in the morning, we wake the brain up. In the middle of the day, we do the reboot that I was talking about, because we need that reboot. And then at night, we work to shut down the brain so you can get the quickest way possible into that level 4 sleep, where your glial-lymphatic system, this lymph system of the brain, opens up and we detox the brain. If you don't detox the brain, it will find a way out. But in the same way that we know there's something called leaky gut, if you have a leaky gut, we know you also have a leaky brain, because you have a brain, just like you have a gut biome, you have a brain biome, and they are linked. So if you heal one, you have to heal the other, because they actually work together. There's a symbiotic relationship there, and it works with the heart as the mediator. So think of the heart as the mediator, and that's why we use something called HRV, to measure these things. How's the nervous system functioning? Are we able to move from sympathetic fight or flight into parasympathetic rest, digest, and recover.
Wow, so much amazing information. I want to mention a few things that you said that pop into my mind. First of all, that it sounded to me like you're saying that the physics is more deep than the chemistry, that when we take supplements, it's in a more shallow level, and then the physics, the lights, the electricity that runs us is more, and when we treat on that level, it heals more from the root cause. So
Right. I
that
mean,
was amazing.
think about all the nutrients you give people. And nowadays, more medical doctors are in line with supplementation because they know everything's bad. But there's still medical doctors out there that say, don't take that supplement because all you do is you just eliminate it out of your system. Well, if you're in a state of fight or flight, you're not digesting. So you can take the world's greatest supplements, and sure, they're going to have some benefit, but they're not going to have the benefit they would have. We did a study with IV therapy, and we showed that when somebody does BrainTap while they're doing IV therapy, rather than just looking at their phone, because the phone is a stressful experience, usually it's not a joyful experience. You know, people are looking, they're interacting, they're doing work, they're doing their beta brain thing. They actually absorb 30% more of the nutrient when they were doing BrainTap at the same time. So you can't do BrainTap all the time, but what we want to do is we want to just give the body a break every once in a while to assimilate, digest, and recover. That's what the parasympathetic's for. And, you know, when you're taking your supplementation, you know, if you're in a state, that's why they've done studies even with prayer before meals. You digest your food better.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, you're praying, whatever that is for you, but the reality is that you're preparing your body to ingest, digest, and use the information from the food you're consuming. If you eat in a state, that's why they say don't watch the news while you're eating, don't even watch TV while you're eating, don't look at your phone while you're eating. All these things, they disrupt the digestive system. You know, that's like having a casual conversation, being with family, you know, these are the things, socializing, these are the things that our body is used to doing for thousands of years, you know, and this is relatively new, what's happening to us today. So we need a new solution to this new problem.
Yeah. And also you mentioned the DMT. I heard about a father of an autistic child that was a researcher, and he found that actually autistic children have a lot of DMT. That's why it's like they're hallucinating most of the time. They look at the lights and stuff like that. So that's really interesting. Something that comes to mind. And also you were mentioning that it lasts, a session with BrainTap lasts for 70 hours, but then you said it's recommended to do it 3 times a day. So what do
Right,
you
so you're always disrupting it. You're creating a new baseline. We can only do 100%, right? So once there's a study that I put up online where I flew from New Bern, North Carolina to California. And what I showed was that I lost 60% of my energy in that flight. And I fly over 100 times a year. So I don't get stressed out about flights. I mean, my wife's sitting next to me. She doesn't fly as much. And when the plane drops, she goes, did you feel that? I go, I didn't even feel it, you know, but my body feels it. I've disassociated from that stress. So what I showed them was and Mike Tyson, who's a boxer, has a saying. He says, everybody had a plan with him until they got hit, right? Everybody has a plan until stress hits them. So what do you do when stress hits them? Because stress is going to hit everybody. So every day I run a business, we're all over the world. So it's not like luckily I have people that do most of the everyday grind, but there's still decisions I have to make, things that happen, disappointments happen, joys happen, whatever. And so I need to keep my body regulated. So I usually do 2 sessions a day. Unless I'm traveling, then I do 3. Because I know that when I'm traveling, I'm not in my same environment. When you're in your own environment and everything's going to happen, you're more at ease. And especially for me, I've set up my environment. So I get up every morning at 5 and I do 2 hours worth of my own fitness because I'm a young 63 and I plan on being around for my grandkids until I decide to leave the planet with my brain. A lot of people leave it up to nature. If you eat the the SAD diet, as they call it here, the standard American diet, you sit around watching, the average person watches 4 hours of television every day. I'm wondering who's watching my 4 hours. So somebody's watching them, because I'm not watching 4 hours of television. I might watch a comedy or two before I go to bed. I like doing that. And usually I get my news from other people, because I can't, if I can't do something about it, why would I worry about it?
Exactly.
I do want to be involved in making my community better, but a lot of the things that stress people out, they have no control over. I have no control over what they do in Washington. I mean, I can have a say, but
and if you don't, someone else has. So you're in their hands.
Yeah. So what I can control is my attitude, my beliefs, my food I intake, my exercise. I can control the books I read. I can control the thoughts I think, even though some people don't believe they can do that. These are the things that are going to make your life worthwhile. If I let life happen to me, like I said at the very beginning, then it becomes a very stressful environment. It's like you're a ping pong ball and you're just being knocked all over the place. And then you wonder, hey, is it sunny out? Can I go have my picnic? No, you can have a picnic in the rain if you want. You can dance in the rain, or you can cry in the rain. It just depends on your attitude about it. And I've been told, because my old company was called Positive Changes, that I'm too damn positive. Someone once said, Porter, you're too damn positive. And I said, well, it's better to be positive and optimistic all the time and be disappointed every once in a while than be disappointed every day and miss the opportunity to have joy and happiness in your life. Because there are some people out there, the Debbie Downers of the world, and the people that look at life, oh, it's terrible, this is a bad place, the government's making my life miserable. Nobody's making your life miserable. You're making your own life miserable. When people wake up and they realize that, and I did this with my kids growing up. We used to go on these long trips, and because I worked a lot, but I had an office, so I would have other people in my office for 6 weeks every summer, and we'd do these big family vacations. So I got to be pretty close to my kids growing up, and they would see me every once in a while get upset. Maybe I couldn't make a fire or something, it's campsite or something. And I said, it's okay to be upset. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be depressed. It's just not okay to stay in those states. I'm not saying you're not going to have them. Those are normal states of consciousness. Now, what I loved about them was they would say to me, you're making me angry. And I said, great. I said, I had the remote control, go to sleep, and act like I was turning off a television. I said, don't let other people control your emotions. As soon as you give away your power, and that's what they mean by somebody says, don't give away your power. You have the power to be happy within you. You have the power to improve your life. Now, it doesn't matter how much I want to be like, let's say, an athlete like Michael Jordan in basketball. I could practice every day and I would never be as good as Michael Jordan. So if I set unrealistic goals, I'm going to be unhappy. And Buddha said it best. He said, all unhappiness stems from unfavorable comparisons. So when you think about whatever your life is and you're comparing it to someone else, forget about it. They have their own life. They have their own mission. You need to compare yourself against yesterday. Are you doing something today that's better? Are you improving yourself today? Remember, there's no there. So, what are you doing today to make your life better? Are you eating a better meal? Are you taking the right supplements? Are you doing some exercise? Are you doing some kind of brain fitness? What are you doing today that's for you, that you can go to bed tonight saying, wow, I took a step forward today? Then you're going to create those great neurotransmitters that are going to help you sleep through the night. You're going to get that 1 hour of deep sleep, that 2 hour REM sleep. You're going to wake up refreshed and go, wow, today's the day that I get to do something else. What am I going to do today that's better? Because there's no graduation. You're going to have to, the old saying with enlightenment, they asked a sage once, they said, you're enlightened now, what do you do? He says, well, before I was enlightened, I would get up, go down to the river, get 2 buckets of water, carrying it up and make my breakfast. He says, and after enlightenment, I'd get up, take the 2 buckets down to the river, get the 2 buckets of water and make my breakfast. It's not that much it's going to change. The only thing that's going to change is your internal experience. You're going to have more joy in doing it, more happiness in doing it.
Gratefulness. Yeah.
Yes, and gratefulness. Yeah, and gratitude's a big part of it, in what we do.
Wow. So I want to ask you specifically, we spoke a little about autistic children, which is a population that I deal with a lot. And also, by the way, one of the parents who bought this, I recommended it and they bought, and they're asking, which there is a program called Spectrum, and they're using it, but they wanted to know if there's anything else that you recommend. And also I have my menopausal women that want to know what is it that it does? I mean, is it the brain fog? Is it what should they look for here?
There's actually a series for menopause called Mind Over Menopause. And when the body's regulated, you can go through menopause without the symptoms of menopause. You don't have to have the night sweats. In fact, when the body changes that temperature of 2 degrees I was talking about, increases in the middle of the night, if your nervous system is dysregulated, you might increase that to 3 or 4. Now you'll start to sweat and you'll have night sweats. But once your body's regulated, you won't experience that anymore. And so diet is really important, obviously, to make sure you're getting the right nutrients and things like that, and get your body moving. You know, your body needs to move. So even if that means set a timer on your computer that says every 20 minutes, get up and stretch a little bit, breathe. Breathing is super important too. We have breathing exercises on the app, but those are really important. So as far as autism goes, there are, of course, we call them the Children's Opportunity for Brilliance. Those were actually designed for the autistic children. But anything that creates alpha activity, so if they just put in alpha, they're going to see music ones. So what I tell the autistic parents or the parents of autistic children, or even if they have adult autism, I would say play that in the room while they're doing other activities. They don't even have to have the headset on, because we have the isochronic tones that work in the room without the headset. And it will just put their brain in sync. Like we have a lot of therapists that do like the metronome work and things like that. While they're doing that, they'll play the BrainTap tones in the background, and the brain will synchronize. And as it learns to synchronize, once it gets enough energy in the brain, and when you said that about them having more DMT, so you also make DMT when you're in theta. So what we find is that autistic children are high degree theta. So when you think of, Robert Melillo wrote a book called Disconnected Kids.
Yeah.
And so I was fortunate to travel with him around Sweden for a month and learned a lot from him. He's a great teacher.
Yeah.
And what he means by that is if they're disassociated, they're in high theta. They're like not in this world.
Yeah.
So think about it like a deep state of meditation, but they're awake.
Right.
And alpha is what manages those frequencies, so you can be intuitive about what's happening. Like they don't know the difference between you and I. That's why they might cause pain to another person, because they don't have that intuitive part of their brain working. Now, if they're in high beta, they start to stim, right? They start to quake and shake. Now think of it like there's too much energy running through the system, and their body can't modulate that, because alpha is also a modulator. So it modulates this energy. So it's all about flow in what happens. So what I would recommend for them is doing the alpha. Once they've gone through we have 43 children's sessions. So they could go through all 43, listen to those 43 again, and just keep doing that until their child, gets resolution. Or they could if they put in alpha, we have probably 400 sessions that are music only alpha. Those would be really good.
Great.
And also, if people are wondering if they could do gamma, we have over 400 sessions in gamma that are just music only gamma sessions. And gamma, think of, just so we can kind of close that loop, gamma is the bass drum for the brain. So think about it like a band, and you've got a marching band, but you don't have a bass drum. Nobody's keeping the rhythm. So as we age, unfortunately, what happens is the gamma brainwave starts to diminish. Now, what we find with creative thinkers and leaders and especially healers, when we've measured people who do like hands-on healing, like massage therapists, Reiki masters, those kind of people, those people generate a high level of gamma.
Mm.
So they didn't ever train to do that. They were some people just have that propensity that their brain operates in high levels of gamma.
Wow, that's fascinating. And what would you, with the BrainTap, but also other practical steps that people can take daily, especially for those with the high stress environments or PTSD, like we have in my country? We have an ongoing war here, so the nervous system, how can we calm it? How can we do it safely with the BrainTap and else?
Besides other nutrients that they can get like from you or something, I would say vitamin B3 is essential. Niacin, it's so cheap, But what it does is it creates vasodilation and blood flow to the brain. So it's the best supplement for mental health. So B3 is super important, or niacin, however you want to do it. Now they have to be careful because they'll get a flush. So do a little bit at first and find out what you want to get a little flushing, or you use the brand that doesn't flush. But the flushing
the non-flush
is good.
is less efficient.
If you can do the flush, that's good. And I usually do it in the morning, just before I exercise, so I get blood flow to the muscles when I'm working out. And most people don't realize it, but when Bill from the Big Book of AA, he actually stopped drinking by taking B3, not by going to meetings and standing up and saying he was an alcoholic. That's ridiculous. I mean, when you stand up and you affirm you're an addiction, you're actually amplifying the addiction. I don't want to go to meetings about being an alcoholic. I want to go to meetings talking about I'm a great human, and that I'm helping my community. Now that might be something that somebody has to go through at first, to get through it. But for me, that doesn't make sense. That'd be like me saying I'm an elephant. I'm not an elephant. In number one law of psychology states you can't be a behavior. So you can't be a behavior. You can be doing a behavior, but you can't be that behavior. Now the other thing I would recommend is plenty of water. The brain is a hydro engine. And so we need some kind of essential fats and water for the brain to function correctly. You're eating those up, especially under stress. Think about it like you're not just going 25 miles an hour down the road, you're going 90 miles an hour down the road. So you're going to use a lot more energy. So you need to drink half your body's weight in ounces of water. Now, if you don't have the BrainTap, which of course, obviously I recommend, but you can do breathing exercises. So in the morning, when you get up, you might not want to do this around your spouse or whatever, family members that might think you're crazy. But what you do is, they call it psychological breathing. So you breathe in deeply, and we do this naturally. Like if you've probably been around people or you've done it yourself, when you're fed up with something, finally you just go. That basically, it's like our pets. When our pets shake, because they're basically trying to get their nervous system realigned. Yeah. If you do that in the morning for a minute or two, you're going to do similar things to what the BrainTap does. Not quite, but you're going to do similar things. You're going to reset your nervous system, get you ready for the day. In the afternoon, I recommend doing what they call box breathing, which is, now all of our special forces are trained in box breathing, because imagine you're like a Navy SEAL, which is our elite special forces, and you got 6 of you and you're going to go take on a battleship. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'd be crushed under the pressure of that, right? Yeah. So what they do is they teach them to breathe into the count of 4, hold to the count of 4, breathe out to the count of 4, hold it out to the count of 4. And you do that for 3 or 4 minutes in the middle of the day. What that will do is it will reset your biological system. It will calm you down. So then at night, the breathing, now there's a lot of other breathing techniques. These are just the 3 simplest that I can tell you right now. So at night, when you're in bed sleeping, or just before sleep, a lot of people, they think the goal is to go to sleep as fast as possible. That's not really the goal. Your body is like an electric motor and it needs to unwind. So most people will unwind by hopefully 2 hours before bedtime, going around shutting off all the lights in their house, maybe even using red light or something like that, or green light.
Going into a bath.
Going into a bath, warm bath, lighting a candle, watching only things that are positive and engaging, reading a book, these kind of things. These are things that calm down, get you prepared for bed. Now, when you get into bed, you've half unwound. You can't just like watch the news and then, or have a difficult call and then go to bed. Your nervous system is just raging. And that's because it's creating the neurotransmitters associated with beta, which is reactionary. So it's preparing you to react to the environment, which you don't want to react to the environment during sleep. You want to unwind and relax. So the breath is called 4-8 breath. So what you do, and these are on a lot of my sessions. So when you breathe in, you breathe into the count of 4. This is going to trigger your sympathetic system. And then at the top of that breath, you start to breathe out slowly. And as you breathe out slowly to the count of 8, you visualize a wave of energy coming down through your body, out the bottom of your feet. And you continue that process until you fall asleep. And what I always encourage people to do when I was in practice was to do this, and the exhale, think of all the things you're grateful for. Even the simple things like, hey, somebody let you go in front of them in an intersection. Somebody complimented you on your hair. You know, whatever the positive things were during the day, focus on those, make them colorful, bright, give them movement, what we call revivify them in psychology, and you're going to sleep through the night. And that's a way to do brain fitness without the BrainTap. It takes a little more effort, but you can do it.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. So I have to share before we finish that for me and my son is we treat it like a sleeping pill. And also many of my patients who bought it, it's really effective for going to sleep for people with insomnia or else. It's something that I think is one of the first things that I saw with my patients. Also, maybe you can say a few words. I have many cancer patients. I know that there is a program for them, but is there anything that you would like
Sure.
to?
I mean, follow the same things I just said, but also we have one if you're working with your medical doctor and you're doing some kind of therapy that like radiation or whatever.
Yeah.
We have what we call coping with cancer. Those are ones that are used in oncology clinics around the world. And basically they're going to help you to focus on your body being at its height of healing, because you're actually causing a lot of stress to the body when you're doing those things. So the body has to recover. Especially radiation, we found when my wife was going through cancer, she could listen to a session after her treatment and she could drive home. She had all the energy, and that's what got us into that oncology center. They go, "What are you doing?" She goes, I'm regaining my energy. Because what they did was they just robbed you of all your energy when you did that. Now, if you're in recovery or you're doing this a natural way, we have one called Say No to Cancer, which is all about visualizing. There's a lot of different visualization techniques that they've proven over time that, for instance, like Pac-Man, which is a video game, you imagine the white marker cells are like Pac-Man and they're eating up the cancer cells in the body. And we have a whole series based on these different visualizations. And people have found great results with those too, that help them. Now, of course, we don't make any claims to what they're working with their medical people to do it. So, but we would just want to work on the stress. If we can build the capacity so you can. Now, it's important to note that every one of us, you and I included, have cancer cells in our body right now, but our white marker cells are eating them up and keeping them at bay because our body is changing at 50 million cells per second. So we need to make sure that we have enough healthy cells rather than the unhealthy cells.
Right, exactly. Okay, so this has been remarkable. It's really a revolution, the BrainTap in how we heal and optimize our minds. And I want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and giving us practical ways to take control of our brain and health, and really inspiring us beyond just the medical advice or all of that, because this conversation has left me with so much to think about, and I'm sure for my audience too. So thank you so much for this, and
You're welcome.
bless you. Keep doing the good work.
Yeah, well, I'm on a mission to better a billion brains. So if you've watched this far, it's your brain we're talking to right now. So let's wake that brain up, because there's something wonderful that you need to do in the world. And we all have a place to play in how the outcome is for everyone we know. So best of luck.
Amen. Thank you so much. תודה שהייתם איתנו עד סוף הפרק. אני מקווה שמצאתם השראה בתוכן של היום. אם נהניתם, אני מבקשת שתשתפו את הפרק הזה אפילו רק עם בן אדם אחד. כך נוכל להפיץ יותר תקווה, ריפוי ושינוי חיובי בעולם. למידע נוסף אתם מוזמנים לבקר באתר שלי shiramed.com. תודה, וניפגש בפרק הבא.